We are here. Yay, we have gone live. Hello, everybody. My name is Andi Kinsey. That's Andi like Gandhi, but without the G. And I am the creator of the Kicking the Bucket podcast. So, welcome to the Kicking the Bucket live stream. This is separate from the podcast. The podcast is a fiction podcast, and it is already premiered. It's on all of the streaming platforms. You can go like, subscribe wherever you want. Episode 3 dropped yesterday, and we will be dropping a new episode every week until August 20th. Again, fiction. This is like a whole new world. It's not talking heads like we're on the live stream right here. It's a story, and it's immersive, and it's a dramedy, so you can laugh and you can cry at the same time. So, what is the point of these live streams? Hello, we have a couple of people already. Welcome, welcome. So, these live streams are kind of done as a companion to the show. So, we think of them kind of as your unofficial guide to aging, autonomy, and all the stuff that no one told you. If you've been listening to the podcast, it's the resources that Dolores and Howard should have had. Today, I'm very, very excited to welcome Wendy Korn, an end-of-life doula and filmmaker, to our live stream. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi, nice to be here.
Good. And so we've got we've got Wendy's URL, so you can get her. She's got the URL in her name, as well as down here in our little ticker thing at the bottom. So I am going to start us off with a couple of the questions, and then if you who are listening have any questions, please throw them in the chat, and we will be able to see them, and we will get to them as soon as possible. So first, who are you, Wendy? Like, who are you? What do you do? Like, how did you get here?
I love that question. Hi, I'm Wendy Korn. I am a documentary filmmaker. In another life, I was also a marketing professional for years, and I segued into the death world because I ended up being my mother's end-of-life doula, although I had no idea what that was. And now in retrospect, it was like, oh yeah, I really walked her home. And then also for income, I'm a bartender. And what's kind of funny about the link between being an end-of-life doula or a bartender or a filmmaker is that I'm behind a camera or behind a bar or with somebody in a very intimate way, but I am disarming people and asking questions and getting their story. So they're kind of tied in together.
Yeah. So did you you felt when you were your mother's end-of-life doula that you were kind of helping her with that journey? Did you feel that calling? And so that's when you were like, I know that I could do this for other people, or was it more of a people don't know that this exists and they need the help? Like, were you trying to fill a void that exists that you didn't have? Or were you saying, no, this is like really where I want to go because I love it? I know it's a bit of both.
Actually, Andi, you just named it, because what I saw with my mother, and both my parents are gone, and very different death experiences. But my mother died in 2020 in the beginning of the pandemic. And what I saw was a lot of the omissions, a lot of what wasn't happening. And even after she died, people were calling to console me, and I found myself consoling them because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to say. So I feel like there's a lot of tools that people don't have, and I feel like it's their birthright to have them. I went on to become an end-of-life doula as a way to fill that void. And then I decided to make a film about this death positive movement, leaning into normalizing, talking about death and dying as a way to give it away. Because not everyone is going to go out and get certified to be an end-of-life doula, yet they should all know these things and have these conversations. And what we're doing today is a really important conversation.
Did so in the process of making this documentary, and because in the documentary, correct me if I'm wrong, you're exploring death rituals from different cultures or different communities, or are you focusing just on the lack of what is available, I guess, in the United States?
I am exploring how, particularly in Western culture, we're kind of no good at death. But I did go to India last year, and I did film in Varanasi, which is really where all the burning of the ghats and walking down to the Ganges is a big ritual. Also in Mexico, how they handle death. In Tibet with the sky burial. So I want to touch upon these things. And I'm in production on Exit Strategy from Scared to Sacred. I'm following a doula here in Austin and her relationship with a client and sort of the unfolding of like, what does a doula do really? Because I want to demystify that. So that's a big part of the film. And then also I have some mavericks in this death positive field. Like my teacher from University of Vermont, Francesca Arnoldi, is in it. She just came out with this workbook. I'm just going to hold it up. It's called The Death Doula's Guide to Living Fully and Dying Prepared, and it's literally a workbook that you could just sit with family and just ask these questions. And it's a lot of like, what do you want? What's important to you? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to name? And it gives you something to like write into, and really invites you to think about these things, because there's 100% chance we're all going to die. So how can we become just more comfortable with this inevitability?
Mm-hmm. Thanks to your suggestion, I put that in the newsletter for the past week. So the link is in the newsletter as a great resource. So have you felt this kind of death illiteracy that we have in the United States or in Western cultures? Do you feel like that this is a new thing? Like, were we more death literate in the past and then something happened and changed and we became less death literate? Or have we always, as a culture, been afraid of death and kind of not wanted to normalize it?
I think at some point long ago, we were way more comfortable with death. We shrouded and buried our own. We had green burials. We had visiting rooms in the parlor room of a home. And when somebody passed, that body could be there for a couple days for visitation. It's not like they're gonna, you know, break down. It happens so quickly here now when somebody dies, it's like, boom, they're taken away. And it's like, no, like let them have that grace of that transition. I always say the first thing to do when somebody dies is nothing. They're not going there anywhere, and death is not an emergency. And if you can say some prayers and be with them and honor that space, this liminal space of their transition, like they're in the ether, you know. So to answer your question, I think that there was a time where we were more comfortable with this, and then the Civil War happened, and sort of like the Men in Black, and we'll take care of it. We'll take them away, and don't worry about it. And then the funeral industry came in, and it kind of separated us from being with this natural process of life. And another fun fact, during the Civil War, when there were people blown up on the battlefield, the term basket case came from collecting those body parts in a basket. Yeah.
The derivation, I think one of our viewers, well, Dana, had said, around something around Lincoln's death. So that that kind of plays into the whole Civil War change. You said this, and it immediately kind of triggered some emotion in my body because I recently have been. My parents were like trying to figure out, they want to be proactive, and they're like trying to figure out, what the how did you call it, the disposition options. And so they were researching this, and one of the things was if something happened to them while they were not in the country and the body.
Mm.
And I I was like, Mom, I have to see you in your death, because if I don't see you in your death, it will not be real. It will not, there will be no sense of closure. And she was like, why? Like, I wouldn't want to see it. And I understand that that is not what everybody wants. I don't know how anybody, else in my family feels about it, but I know that that is something that I would need, because it's like you said, it's like this, it's not an emergency, and it helps to bring that sense of closure. So can you talk to us a little bit about like some of the disposition options? Because I know that you said the rise of the funeral industry, and you said that there's so much more than just these traditional funerals.
Yeah.
That
I
we
think that
understand.
there's this
Yeah.
perception that you're either 6 feet under or you're cremated, and that's that. And
Mhm.
there are a lot of alternative disposition options that are coming into our consciousness. They're being written about, they're being talked about, like natural organic reduction, which is human composting, and a return to the green burial, because even cremation is a big carbon footprint, as well as taking up space in the ground with an expensive casket that's not going to break down. Like, that we need to move away from. And so there's another, um, becoming a tree.
Mhm.
So there are these newer, more environmentally conscious options, and I think they are coming to the forefront as we are seeing that these old ways of thinking about death are just becoming obsolete.
Mhm.
And
No.
and also just a, part of the racket of the funeral industry is like, the more you love your person, the more expensive the casket's going to be with all the bells and whistles, and it's like, no, you could just get a simple pine casket. You can get a cardboard casket. There's movements to like paint it and honor it in a different way, and even shrouding your person and decorating them with flowers and green burial is so beautiful, and it's so like correct. That's how I want to go.
We're lucky. There's one just outside of Austin now that
Yes.
just opened up, and so yeah, we got to do a tour there.
Hmm.
It was in conjunction with the mycological, is that the mycological of the mushroom, basically the Mushroom Society.
Yeah,
And so,
it's really,
um,
yeah.
it was really cool. I mean, like I always thought of like cremation and like, throw me to the winds, or so I'll always be there. But like, what better than just going directly into the ground? You become part of the whole cycle again. So
Dust to dust. I mean, just yeah.
dust to dust, as you said. So you beforehand, we were talking a little bit about, changing the ritual around not just well, perhaps also like the funeral experience and the ritual around that, and um changing that slightly. Do you want to talk about that, or a little bit more about changing the ritual around how we prepare for our deaths when we're thinking of advanced directives, and like you were talking about in the workbook, all the questions that you bring up at that
We
time?
can talk about both,
Okay.
but with funerals, even funerals now are being reframed as celebrations of life. There's still that traditional funeral for older people that have that expectation and comfort level of going to the church and wearing black and doing that, right?
Mhm.
But now there's also celebrations of life. For example, when I die, please don't wear black. I want you to be in funky costumes and fun as a reflection of knowing me, right? As a way to celebrate me. And I've talked about this with people, but I have a Spotify death playlist that you
Nice.
can play at my celebration of life. I want a clothing rack with I'm a big thrifter. I want a clothing rack with like all of my clothes that people can just take something, and my jewelry. So that is just a way that I feel like it's starting to happen. Like have music, like what my favorite foods. These days I'm vegan. I want a vegan food at my celebration of life. So this is a way to customize and think about what you want, and like as if you were there. And then some people also are opting for a living funeral, which is actually you do get to be there, and it's like a big birthday party and you get to hear the eulogies. Obituaries are fact-based, and eulogies are really bringing in feeling and stories and the essence of who that person was, and that's why they're so important.
Are you okay? So I don't know if this is an ethical question or so these living funerals, are they reserved for people who are on the cusp, or could you have a living funeral when you're like younger and you don't have anything like, on the horizon that might end your life? Uh, Do you, yeah. So I'm like, I want a living funeral, but I guess I could
Yeah,
just
you
call
can
it a
you
birthday
can
party.
call it, because you have agency of your life. And
Uh-huh.
and this whole idea of these types of conversations is to really give you that agency and that confidence to really say, I have X amount of time and I want to live it this way, and I want to die this way. And maybe for my, big life cycle birthday, I want to have that because I want to hear what people have to say about me. How did I touch their lives? And really, in the end, that's what matters.
Yeah. So if we can think of that sooner rather than later. For anyone who's just now joining us, I'm Andi Kenzie with Kicking Bucket Podcast and talking with Wendy Korn today, an end of life doula and filmmaker. And we're talking about all of those things about death and dying. And we were just now getting into like the things that you wanted to document about your life and what you think is important and how you affect people, and and we were also talking about preparing for that. So can we get a little bit into like how you would like people to approach their advanced directives, and from a joyful manner, like you talked about having like, parties around it, and getting people together to talk about their advanced directives in a group setting.
Yeah, and we could talk about advanced directives, and the other piece that I think goes with doing sort of the admin of end of life is also really thinking about one's legacy and what they did, how they affected people, what was important to them, what are their values, and then that can parlay into like what do we want in our advanced directives at the end of life. And advanced directives are not just, um, you know, sign the dotted line and that's it. It really is an invitation to think about what it is you want. And so, this idea of having like an advanced directives party is just like, let's get together, let's be in community, and let's make it interactive and fun because there's 100% chance we're all going to die. And why not be in this together, because we all need to do that. And like, who is your emergency contact? Who is your power of attorney? What are your wishes so that you can be honored? And people can honor you in that way, and you can know that you are being taken care of. And there's something about that brings a peace when you are at the end of your life. If people know exactly what you want. For me, I have no kids. My niece and nephew, who are in their 30s and live in the UK, I joke with them and I'm like, you got me, right? like you got me and you know what I want. And um,
Yeah.
but
Do you, so when you're talking about the advanced directives, so help me understand. So there's the forms that you fill out, but before we even get to those forms, there needs to be another process. I think this is what you call the life review or dignity therapy. Is that what happens before you fill out the forms? And then when you're having these advanced directive parties, have you already had to do that solo work first before you get to the stage where you can start to fill out the forms?
I think a way to approach the forms is to really have that soul searching time with yourself and with your loved ones, and knowing in yourself what do you want. There should be no surprises. It's like, and the more clear you can be about it with everyone, and very very specific, then it's empowering. And then you have this, official forms, and it will be notarized, and it will be a part of your whole kit, if you will. Um, and all these things. For example, one of the things, I work with swan songs, which is our musical last rites. So, for example, if somebody is dying and they loved the Beatles, there's musicians that will come and do a concert, a home concert, or in hospice, or in a common room in a retirement community, but it's not a performance. It's really for that person. And the way that Swan Songs is set up is that it's free to the recipient, and it's a nonprofit where the musicians get paid. So it's such a win-win, and it's such a beautiful offering, for somebody to be presenced in this way, and be able to receive this gift. And so when we think about end of life and dignity therapy, it's like, this is a way to receive and know, that you've really lived a good life, or there's maybe things that you need to reconcile, or what do you regret. But it's so good to actually think this through and not push it away, because it's coming whether or not you want it. And it's really empowering to lean into it. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes, like in this process and the journey, part of the fear as being of the Gen Xer is that we're hearing all of these things that are available right now, like things that are out there right now for if we are lucky enough to get to the ripe old age, right? And I don't know how many of those things will be available in the future, but because it's been um, you know capitalized, it feels like sometimes this like beautiful death is only available for the people who can afford it. So it was really lovely to hear that there is a nonprofit that is out there that's kind of trying to find a way, because death and the rituals around it used to be done by the community and it was not something that you had to pay for. um, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, the artists deserve to get paid. So it's like such a catch 22. Like at the same, like it's become so commercialized, but within that commercialized aspect, how do we find and fight for the human and the realness and the just being like, this is our responsibility as a community.
And
I don't know
taking
that I
it
have a
back,
question with that.
taking
It's
it
just,
back,
yeah.
like from the funeral industry. And I think that that's what the death positive movement is doing. That's what end of life doulas are talking about. Um, and the men in black and the funeral uh, parlors are becoming obsolete, even the way they look and feel. Somebody in my film says, the tears of generations are like in the carpet. They're so sad. And it's like, how do we bring a lightness to this? Because at the end of the day, your grief is only a reflection of your big, beautiful heart as you were able to feel and love for somebody else. And that's what we want to highlight.
I feel like we could keep on talking forever, but we're nearing the end of our time. Do you have any, like that was a beautiful like closing thought, but do you have anything else that you'd like to share that we didn't get to touch on yet? Perhaps about,
I
what
do.
doulas
I do have
are, your
something.
film. Yeah.
When you are with somebody who is dying, I think a lot of people need some guidance with, and I get a lot of calls around that. Like, I've become a go-to person for any friend that's just saying, my sister is dying. What do I do? And so I'm not in an official doula role, but I am sort of like on call as that friend that everybody calls, right? And I say, bring in the five senses. So if you go to somebody's room and they're in hospice, it's like, what can you do to bring something that is of comfort? You can touch, so you can massage their feet. You can bring in some essential oils. You can play some music that is their favorite music, even if they're nonverbal, they can hear. Um, so all these things to bring that sweet presence in, and really think of it as a ritual when you go to visit somebody, not as a burden, like, oh, I need to go do this, but like, how can you sit with that person? And we don't know how much time they have, but can you hold their hand and can you just be with them and presence yourself there?
I think of the end of life doula as helping the person, like if you think of a birth doula, helping the person giving birth or
Correct.
helping the person who is passing. But it's so true that we, in our death illiteracy, we don't know how to handle it when you're not the person who is passing. Like, what do you do in those situations?
Right. And having these, and even speaking to them, and giving permission is such a big thing. Like just saying, you don't need to hold on anymore.
Mhm.
You've been so good. You've had a full life. I'm going to be okay. That's what I said to my mother. And when I was going through this and I was speaking to my mother and it was just coming through me, the hospice nurse was in the next room. And then she said to me, "Are you in the medical field?" And I was like, "No, not at all." And she said, "Because you're saying everything that we were taught to say, and it is just that. It's just, and giving people that permission is huge. And you can always bring in the Ho'oponopono prayer, like, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I love you, please forgive me, and thank you. And you could always fall back on those.
Yeah. I,
That's a
was,
great way to start. If you're, and that's what I would say to people is, if you don't know what to do sitting with somebody, just go
mhm.
to that.
Yeah. I was talking on one of our other live streams that I first heard that on The Pit, the series, the TV series. And so, um, and then also like how important I think that, as you've mentioned, and we're learning so much, is that when you're planning for your end of life, it makes you live so much more in the present. And so
So heart
all of these
opening, right?
things,
It's so
yeah.
life affirming to be with somebody who is dying and sharing that liminal space and recognizing, life in its fullest as it ends is so, like, to me, it's so heart opening. Some people are like, "Ooh, really? You did that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's amazing." Yeah. And there's, can I just recommend a book really quick?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, It's called Final Gifts with Maggie by Maggie Callahan.
Uh-huh.
And toward the end of life, people really can dial it in exactly when they're going to die. My mother died on the eve of Mother's Day, and we were not a Hallmark family. And now Mother's Day is really Mother's Day.
I love it. Okay, so Final Gifts is the name of this book.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Now, so we have to wrap it up, but those of you who you can contact Wendy both at her website, which is listed on her name as well as below, exitstrategy.life. This is the documentary, the film that you're working on. And Wendy is also going to be at one of our upcoming listening clubs. I'm just checking the date. It's on August 13th. So you're joining us for episode 7 at the House and Branch if you're here in Austin. Please, please, please continue these conversations on the socials, like, comments, anything that you want to, questions, put it out there in the socials. Next week we will return. No, sorry. Next week we're off for the next 2 weeks for the live streams because I'm teaching a Shakespeare camp. So no live streams for the next 2 weeks, but we're returning on August 7th with Alex Casas. Did I pronounce her last name right? Because Alex actually gave you as a connection to us. So, okay, she's an end-of-life educator and doula as well, and the co-founder of Pale Hearse. Again, come see Wendy. Thank you to all of you who jumped online with us today and are listening to it afterwards. Episode 3 is out. Please like, subscribe, follow all of the streaming platforms. Thank you so much. We're going to sign off now. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for having me. It's great to chat with you.
Thanks, Wendy. We look forward to the listening club on August 13th.